Okay, so today's Saturday, the 11th of October, and it has been just about a week since I started my OSCP declaration or my journey, you might say. And I want to start by going back over how my week went and covering some of the things that I worked on. So for the first week on Monday, we started by setting up my notes apps, and I tested out quite a few. I was working in Obsidian again, and then I was working in Cherry Tree, and finally I settled on Joplin, just simply because Joplin provides all the same functionality as the rest, like folder hierarchies, to-do lists, and Control F searching across all notes was important to me. And after all that, I saw that Cherry Tree and Joplin had just about the same functionality, but Joplin looked a lot prettier and more modern, so I went with Joplin. I was working on learning or relearning the Markdown syntax and just other basic operating system functionalities on the command line. I was thinking about and reading about different study strategies that I can employ as I'm going through these different documents and I'm going through these different sites and how I take notes. And then I had to go back through and using my old school account, I had to make another Hack the Box account. But my Academy account was the same, but I had to go back and make a Labs because this is a whole different new account. All my progress was reset to 0. So I spent the better part of the week getting my foot in the door with Starting Point, which is their initial set of boxes that we should be setting up. And I've been taking good notes on those. I'm still working on it. I'm on tier 1. Hopefully I'll have that done by the end of next week and I can start working towards just the OSCP list. And this is the OSCP list I'm talking about here. At least on Hack the Box, I want to get through these ones. I want to have notes built up to the point where I can actually understand what's going on. So on Tuesday, I finished up tier 0, which is like the very basic stuff where I was working on like database stuff, so basic SQL, uh, learning how to terminally interact with RDP, RPC, NetBIOS, SMB, all those FTP, Telnet, all that basic stuff. In the middle of that, though, I did get a little distracted, and while I was I was learning dir busting with GoBuster, and in the middle of it, I thought it'd be a good idea to test my Python skills and go ahead and build my own Python program to do dir busting, which I did. I made a write up on it. It's in my code projects on my GitHub. You know, it was fun. The day went well. But the detour I made on that Python program, I already knew how to make it. Nothing was very challenging. It was just, I guess, more fun. And that rabbit hole led me to waste about half the day. So on Wednesday, I had to do a lot of work, a lot of computer-based stuff, and that ate up a good 4 hours. You know, life happened, and I had to go entertain my wife. She had the day off earlier, and we went on and did some things. But yeah, I was working on some SQL injection later in the night. But as I'm on my computer, I find a lot of distraction in Discord. You see, it's open now, but yeah, I'm constantly being hit up. So I think as I'm going into these study sessions, I need to actually go down to a drop up and actually quit Discord. That might help a lot because then messages wouldn't pop up, beeps and boops and all this other stuff in the background, red lights flashing, sitting in calls. None of that would happen. I'd be able to actually focus on what I was doing and reading. So Thursday, I actually got into my first box. It was still tier 1, but the box crocodile actually was a little more fun than just straight up trying to get into one service listed on a box. The crocodile box had me actually jump from a basic web exploit to into another service hosted publicly on that device. That was pretty fun. So, and then I got to thinking and reading about different pen testing guides. There's a lot of websites and resources out there. This is one here, pen testing guide. There's hack tricks. There's all these other different pen testing walkthrough guides. But a lot of them have this pre-engagement section that I began reading about, and that ate up a little bit of my day. But most importantly, what I learned out of it was the definition of a scope in the terms of pen testing, how a company can set a scope on domains, on IPs, on services, on different aspects of the network, physical equities, and all those other things. But I realized how important that is as we go into a pen test. Then I started reading and practicing the basic steps of the information gathering phase, where it's looking at passively for things that don't interact with the target, doing different ENS enumeration strategies and public repository queries, trying different Google Dork. But I'm finding that Google Dorking is actually becoming more blocked. And as you start to shoot off more and more refined Google Dorks, the search engine provider will actually block your IP because it's suspicious now, which I think is interesting. I wish I could have lived back in the early 2000s days where everything was just the fucking Wild West. ISPs didn't know what the fuck was going on, and any form of basic encryption was like top tier. You're never finding me. But then, anyway, moving on. Though I was already familiar with port scanning and some DNS enumeration stuff, I went ahead and practiced those things again. I brushed up on my Nmap pages in my notes here. I mean, I have port scanning. I went back and touched up on my all my Nmap notes. These are all from the Hack the Box Nmap evading IDSs and firewalls Academy on Hack the Box. Is very good. I very highly recommend it. Really lets you know the ins and outs and the understanding at the core functionality of what happens at the raw socket layer that Nmap needs. One thing I do need to go back and though GoBuster was teaching me about directory busting, subdomains, and vhosts. I want to say I do understand vhosts, but it's something that I'm not the most comfortable with. And subdomain queries, yes, I get you can fuzz those. I've done it before with Fuzz Faster, the FFFuff tool, but I'm not fully understanding the back end behind all that stuff and why it's important and why people do it. Another thing that I noted too are technologies like name-based virtual hosting, where you can use one hardware rack. You can split multiple domains off of one IP for different websites. So how you go about discovering that, I still need to look more into, but I mean, that'll just come with time. But on Thursday, the session went okay. I was scatterbrained a lot and not focused on the right things until late at night. That's what I found myself really struggling with, is focusing during the day when I want to go out and have this energy to go out and do stuff. Don't want to sit on the computer, but I end up doing it anyway, and I'm scatterbrained and I'm watching YouTube, or I'm reading about this, or I'm playing other shitty games, or just being overall distracted until later at night when my wife goes to bed. But then all my friends come on Discord, and then I start getting calls and texts, and it's just a spiral. So really trying to whittle out what it means to study and how to isolate myself. It's going to be something I try and focus on in the next week coming up. But moving on to Friday, I started reading about basic protocol analysis with some of the most key network resource utilities and monitoring tools, namely SMB, SMTP, and SNMP. Though I was aware of SNMP and like how it uses OIDs to categorize and name specific resources that you can query through SNMP agents, I didn't quite fully understand the breakdown of the SNMP tree hierarchy, and I thought it was interesting to learn about, to say the least. And then SMTP, I did not know that you could actually just netcat interact with it and then shoot verify messages to verify hosts and see if they are actually like mail server hosts. You can just do that. It'll just tell you. I think that's pretty cool. But SMB, one of the biggest things I learned with this, yes, I've interacted with SMB on 445 a lot, but I didn't really understand the back end, like back compatibility with NetBIOS or NetBIOS over TCP. So interacting with the session service on 169 and actually learning how to query for NetBIOS names on 167. I mean, all that was cool. I got hands-on playing with that and Hack the Box, and I took a little detour later on to make a video about VMDK files, as I was, I've done it a million times, but I forgot how to load VMDK files into VirtualBox and what the difference was between ISOs. So I made a quick video on that. I mean, just threw it out there for anyone that ever happened to search for it. And then later in the night, right around probably 11, 12, I started working on a supposedly very easy Hack the Box challenge called Responder. And Responder really focuses on what seems to be NTLM hashing and authentication, another legacy protocol. But to get to the NTLM hashes, or to make the host reproduce the NTLM hash and try and authenticate or collect it, we began by noticing a couple flaws. One was where I learned about the name-based virtual hosting, where it was hosting an IP, which tried redirecting you to a domain, but the domain wasn't resolvable, so you had to add it to your Etsy host file. There's a whole thing. And then once you are able to populate and load the website with all of its JavaScript and beautiful CSS, there's one button in the corner that'll utilize an include PHP function improperly with unvalidated input. So we're able to manipulate that and specify a double dot, like go back a directory, and we can traverse the backend file system. But after I was sitting there reading that stuff and trying to understand it and do it and take notes on it, my eyes were going crossed. My eyes felt like rocks. I was tired. I was very tired, and I could not even read straight. I had to reread things over and over and over, and I still did not understand. So I had to put it down, and I'll end up going back to it. But that's kind of a thing with more, I want to say more complicated. I know it gets far more complicated than that. I don't think it's a bad thing that I was able to put it down and now go back to it today. I think understanding when you're not learning optimally It's very important. And hopefully today I'll go right back into it and it'll snap and click right into place, and I'll go on about my merry way with a beautiful understanding of file inclusion, exploitation. And I was even reading that there's remote file inclusion, meaning that I can upload a file to it. I don't know how that works quite yet, but still getting into it. As you saw in the thing I pulled up about pen testing guide, I'm still reading into it. So I mean, that was my week. I think I look at the stuff like the boxes I'm doing and the shit I'm having roadblocks on, and I kind of get a little disheartened. But think back to it, and all legends were noobs once. Rome wasn't built in a day. I made note of those little things. I think it's week one. I think I'm only going to start laying the foundation these first few weeks with notes, methodology, comfortability, and then eventually it'll just become second nature. I want to ask, like, why are you dedicated to training? So I was asking myself earlier this week because I see a passion in it, find it interesting, and I think it's fun. But I can't have that fun unless I put in the work to train and actually fully understand and make myself marketable. So again, as I was being distracted throughout the whole week and I couldn't think straight, I'd ask, what does training actually look like in a world full of distractions? I mean, is your training just completing a course, clicking a couple buttons, getting through it, getting the cool little PDF printout at the end? Is it checking the box with a college degree? Or is it working to fully understand the complex topics that you're going about studying so that you can fully utilize them in the real world? I want that last one. I want to fully understand. I don't want to just click through a checklist. I don't want to be someone else's work monkey. I want to have my own comprehension on a difficult skill set that no one else in the world, or very few people in the world, actually have a grasp on. I want to leave it off on that though. I know it's pretty simple. Little checklist. I'll try and keep these notes going throughout the rest of the weeks. But yeah, I want to thank you for tuning into this video, keeping up with me. Thank you again. I hope you have a good rest of your day.